Good morning, everyone, and I want to add my welcome also to all of you here to engage in what we hope is really a dialogue about these issues. And we'll start with some presentations, but definitely we'll have lots of time for question and answer so that we can all be engaged in this conversation. I just want to reiterate some of Ali's opening comments with the front page of the News Tribune this morning. What's the topic? Immigration and immigrants. And that's been the case, I think, for weeks and months. And so I would agree that this is a very timely topic, and we're glad you're here to be part of this discussion. So I'm going to moderate the panel. My name is Liz Dunbar. I'm the Executive Director at Tacoma Community House and a member of the Urban Studies Advisory Board, and very pleased to be asked to be part of this. We have a great panel this morning. I'm going to introduce them very briefly. Their bios are in your program, but we will hear from them in the order in which they're seated, and as I said, give a lot of time for question and answer. So I think I'll also be a bit of a timekeeper here to keep the initial remarks fairly brief so that we have plenty of time for discussion. So first to my immediate right is Marty Campbell, City Council member for the City of Tacoma, who's been very involved as a small businessman and as an activist in the East Side community where he lives and where many immigrants live. And so we look forward to hearing from his perspective. Next is Liesl Santkuyl, who is a long-term Tacoma resident advocate, a Latina immigrant who is very involved, particularly in the public health field, and is currently the Coalition Coordinator for Leaders in Women's Health, which is an initiative of Northwest Leadership Foundation. She's also one of the leaders of Latinx, and she'll, I'm sure, talk about that in her remarks. Next, we have Sulja Warnick, someone I've known for only about 40 years. I'm aging both of us, sorry. But Sulja is one of the founders of Korean Women's Association. She is also a business owner and very active in the Korean community and will share her perspective. She is a retired educator and a longtime teacher in the Tacoma School District, a bilingual educator, and actually started the Korean language program for Tacoma School District and recently received an award from the school board for that. So. And last but certainly not least is Felipe Filomeno, who is Dr. Felipe Filomeno, who is a professor and focuses his research on the governance of international immigration with a focus on at the urban level. And he has an impressive background. He's a Fulbright scholar, PhD from Johns Hopkins. So we're very happy to have him on this group as well. So with that, I'll turn it over to Marty.
Thank you, Liz. Liz, do you remember the first time we met? It was about 8, 9 years ago. I was running for city council out doorbelling, and I knocked on Liz's door, and she said, "Come on in." And her kid had just returned from college and sat down with her and her husband, Mike. All right, can everyone hear me there better? All right. And so you invited me into your home, and we sat and for probably about 30 minutes and just talked about Tacoma and making Tacoma better and about the work you do with immigrants. So was meant a lot to me then, and since then I've had the honor of working with you. So thank you for the opening comments and all that you do for Tacoma. You know, I look at my colleagues here to the right, and I realize I'm probably the least likely to be up here at this table. As far as immigrants go back, someone asked me this the other day is, when did your, most everyone has come to this country, when did it first start? And with me, it was the great, would be 12 times great grandfather was William Bradford, general or captain of the Mayflower of the Pilgrims that came over. So as far as immigration goes, I go as far back as it can. And the other part of my family goes back to Cherokee Nation. And so even predating the Mayflower coming in. So I didn't grow up in a house, I grew up in a very white house, a small farm in Nebraska with some very conservative values at that time. And it's really coming out here to the West Coast and getting to Tacoma that has really opened, for me, the value and contribution of immigrants throughout our society. And so sometimes it's not coming from where I've come from, it's the observations of immigrant communities that has made me passionate about making sure that we have contribution of all voices and contributions into our community. About a year and a half ago, I was fortunate enough to be able to take a day job, aside from my city council, as a community association manager in the Salishan community in the east side of Tacoma. Now, you talk about a diverse community. We are 1,600 housing units, 400 homeowners, about 600 Section 8 housing, some senior housing, but about 3,000 people on 110 acres, so very dense and from all over the world. No one can even begin to make a guess at the number of languages that are spoken. We've categorized at least 30, but we know that it's larger than that. And every day I get the opportunity of working with people from all over the world, and it's great. I get to go in and look in our community gardens that we have, and Swan Creek Metro Parks has one just outside. That's one of the largest in the city, and you walk through it with, I've walked through with master gardeners who don't recognize many of the plants that are growing. And they're like, I don't know what that is, and they don't recognize because it's been brought over from somewhere else. And this garden is great if you ever get a chance to visit it up off Roosevelt. And the gardening techniques using all this natural wood taken out of the forest to build trellises that are built not like anything you see in Home Depot, because it's all this institutional knowledge that's come from all over the world is all coming together in that one spot and building community. And that's what's great. About 3.5 years ago, I had a chance as a city council member to attend a National League of Cities leadership conference in Austin, Texas. And the topic at that time was immigration. And I thought this was good. I serve East Tacoma, be great. And it ended up being life-changing for me. We had the heads of, from New York City, the head of their Welcoming Cities program that they have in New York City, and from Dayton, Ohio, and they're in Austin, Texas. And I got to meet with this 3-day intensive conference from people all across the nation who are working on immigrants and making immigrants part of their society every day. And what I began to put into words, what I'd already known, was the contributions that they have in the community and real ways that they are helping through. We focused on, and today we focus a lot on labor and the regional economy, but it's the arts and the language and everything that we do in our community is thankfully has the influences from all around the world. And I think more so here in Tacoma, being a West Coast port city, we're far more diverse when it comes to where we come from than most cities in this nation. Even myself, having come from the Midwest, that's what we love about Tacoma, is that it's a great welcoming city, not just for immigrants, but for everyone. And I think the one thing that really struck me was, being a longtime entrepreneur myself, was the number that Ali put up there. 13.5% of the Washington State population is foreign-born. 15% of entrepreneurs in our community are foreign-born. They're outperforming the demographic. So when we talk about what are the contributions, it's not just through workforce, it's through entrepreneurship. You don't come 7,000 miles to the land of opportunity to not seek opportunity, to not put other people to work, to not go after your dreams. And I see that every day. The other thing that I love about immigrant populations, and it's pretty clear when you meet me, is I love food. And when you look at the contributions from immigrants from all over the world, and if I had to eat cheeseburgers every day, I don't think I'd be a very happy person. So really just happy to, or honored to represent the Lincoln District, which has the greatest variety of food, I think, in Pierce County. At least my district does. We have some of the most award-winning restaurants. But I understand immigration is much more than just food, but that's the point where a lot of us have connection. where we make the first contact with it and realize that this is something bigger than us. And if you ever really want to enjoy a meal, sit down with a family of immigrants where you don't speak the language. And for me, I've had that opportunity a few times, and that is just a complete blessing. Some of the things that's come out of the Welcoming Cities program that we brought to the city was really just finding a way to make the city intentionally thinking about the way that we integrate with immigrants in our community. That is making sure that we're multilingual where we can be, supporting our school district in what they're doing in educating the children of immigrants. And I see that Liesl has a big stack of information from the Tacoma Latino Town Hall, which was one of the first big initiatives that we took off on, so I'll let her talk a little bit about that. But it was really recognizing that the Latino population is a significant portion of Tacoma. Yet, for me, what I saw is they were underrepresented in city government, not just in the employment numbers, but in our committees, boards, and commissions, that we weren't having immigrant populations represented in the advisory boards to our city council. And so how do we get more people on there? So we went out, had a couple task force. One of the very first things that we said is this town hall needs to be in Spanish. And if you're going to come listen to it, then I had to put on the translator. I had to see what it was like to listen in a different language, which I think was a very powerful thing that we did. And then just a couple weeks ago, the City Council is bringing forward a task force on immigrant and refugee relations. So kind of following in the Latino Town Hall model roundtable, we're doing a task force. I want to thank who's with us today, Councilmember Walker Lee, who's recently rejoined the council, and within 1 week she calls me up and says, look, I don't want to create waves, but let's do this task force. And I said, that's why you're a great contribution. So thank you for your work in bringing that forward and working with myself and a few other colleagues and bringing forward what I think is going to be a great task force here, looking at ways we can engage immigrants and refugees and make Tacoma not just a welcoming city, but a safe city for everyone who wants to call Tacoma home.
Thank you very much, Marty. That's great.
Liz, just a quick question. Do we have that much time each, or do we need to keep our...
Yeah, I think the guidance from Ali was 7 minutes. Yeah.
Keep it. All right, thank you. Bienvenidos a todos. Good welcome to all. I would love to see a little bit about the audience. So how many, would you stand up if you are an immigrant? Thank you. Thank you very much. Will you sit down, please? And if you are a member of the Latino community, would you please stand up? Thank you very much. So I'm going to speak a little bit about from the Latina perspective because I was born in Venezuela and I'm an immigrant. I'm a naturalized citizen here in the United States, and I'm a long-term community member as well. I've lived here 20 years. And I love seeing the demographics and the statistics that Ali showed because one of the things that always strikes me is that I hear from a lot of other leaders like, where is the Latino community? They're so hidden. And so I'm delighted today that the audience is pretty diverse, but oftentimes I will go to things like this, and I'm one of the few Latinas in the audience. And that speaks to a lot of things, but it speaks to how we treat our immigrants. So I want to talk about definitely Latinos and other immigrants as contributors, but I'm also going to ask or demand that we do more for our Latinos, and that we don't expect Latinos only to do, or immigrants to only do for their own people, that we ask ourselves as a community, what are we doing and how are we supporting? And this is a little bit of what I've been doing for 20 years, so I need more people in this fight. I'm going to talk a little bit about Latino town halls that Marty mentioned. We were very fortunate to have the support of the city of Tacoma on these Latino town halls. And there are a few people in the audience that were members of the group that organized that. And some of the ones that stood earlier are some of those organizers. And please, I see Efrain in the back. He's one of our continuing supporters. We formed into an organization called LUS, and it stands for Latinx Unidos. de la South Sound. So we're using a gender-neutral Latinx versus Latina or Latino. And our average age is much younger, and you see that in the demographics. So I'm probably one of the oldest in the group, and I'm really delighted to see younger leadership come forth. So this is a new informing group out of the Latino town halls that took place last year. We have a 20-page report that I'd love to send you electronically. I didn't want to kill a whole bunch of trees in printing them, but I'll talk a little bit about the findings of that Latino town hall today. And it's got to be very brief, but I was thinking about what parts of it might be most important to highlight. One of them was opportunities for collaboration with the city. So I'm gonna start there. And this was community-based participatory research because it was designed by community for community. So we had 250 total participants in the two town halls. They were on the east side and South Tacoma. They were held bilingually. With 3 different focus groups at each. So one that was Spanish-speaking only, one that was English-speaking only, and one that was for youth, that was bilingual. And this is the recommendation that came out of some of that community-based participatory research. Opportunities for new and improved resources and increased availability and accessibility to existing resources in Tacoma were the first themes discussed in all 6 of the Latino Town Hall focus groups. Economic resources, very pertinent to this, appeared to be of particular importance to Latino community members. Participants made calls for increased economic funding and investment in infrastructure development, utilizing the Port of Tacoma as a source of employment programming to promote inclusivity in employment, such as internships, apprenticeships, technical training programs, etc., broader outreach to the Latino community in presenting work opportunities, an increase in professional growth opportunities for those already employed, and the use of the employment resources group model used in Seattle. These are very specific recommendations. So my challenge to the city of Tacoma is to really dig into this report where we are not talking about potholes. We are not talking about potholes. We're talking about economic development. And this was a very unsophisticated, we really, we did our best to reach out to a broad range of Latinos. This was not just professional Latinos. This was not just undocumented. This was a wide range of Latinos. So the report is very in-depth. The other thing I wanted to highlight just really quickly is, again, from the 250, some of the strengths. And I'm so proud of the work that we did because, again, as I read through it, it's not just talking about our pride in our intergenerational extended members of our family and bilingual skills, some of the things that people already know. But the most prominent strength discussed in the focus group centered on support that Latinos provide to their fellow Latino community members. It is critical to substantiate and acknowledge cultural pride, which extends everything from values and norms to music, dance, and food that many Latino subgroups share. And the May English Language Focus Group explained that Latino communities support local economies, including both Latino-owned businesses and local businesses outside of the Latino community. So again, this group highlighted economic development and know that we are an economic driver of the region. It's not a surprise to us. We are working hard, and I loved the demographics that Ali talked about because many times when I say I'm an immigrant, people are surprised. There is a stereotype about immigrants, and I encounter it on a daily basis. So I have a master's degree. I work in public health. I work in a variety of different roles and social service supports, but I feel like I'm working from 7 a.m. to 9 o'clock most days. And it's not all because I get paid for all of that, but I work really hard. And I think I am a typical immigrant. And so I want people to know that. I want people to know we are hard workers, we work hard to get our education, and I loved seeing that reflected in the demographics. Another challenge beyond the town halls is education. So I have kids in the Tacoma Public Schools. I'm regularly in the Tacoma Public Schools for not just as a parent, but I try to provide services as well and be part of a contributing member. And I have to say, I don't think our schools are doing as well by our Latinos as they need to be doing. And if you take a look at third, fourth, fifth grade reading scores and some of the demographics besides graduation rates, you'll begin to see that. So my call for action in the education sector is to take a look at how we can support our bilingual families better. And I did work in the education sector for 3 years prior to taking the job as coalition coordinator and back in public health. One of the things we see in health is that we need to not just think of health as health care. We need to be thinking of health as housing, economic development, jobs, education, and the list will go on and on. Healthcare is only a small piece of people's health. And so there are movements afoot, Affordable Care Act, which I hope that pieces of it will stick around, was one of those movements that was really trying to change our perception and the way we put it all in, on healthcare and not broaden it out to the other things that matter to health. But locally, there is an Accountable Communities of Health committee. It's a brand new 501c3, but the work has been going on for the last 2 years with the health department as the backbone agency. And this new 501c3 will get to spend, well, not the statewide, we will have $1.1 billion in Medicaid transformation to work on these social determinants of health. So this is another movement of front to really look at housing, socioeconomic development, and beyond that, just access to health care. But I have to say that healthcare came up, access to healthcare came up really big in these town halls and the lack thereof for undocumented specifically. So this is an issue in our community. I know that the woman sitting next to me is so interesting, and so I'm going to yield my time, but I would like to ask anybody who wants to talk to me about this afterwards to, I have a place here at the table on the left. I'm glad to include anybody in Latinx Unidos of the town hall, from the town halls, the new group that's forming. We are having kind of new people come in just once a month at this time so that they can learn about it. And while many of us are working on subcommittees to do specific outcome work. And once you want to, if you say, yes, I want to be part of that work group, we will include you with much more work. But if you just want to kind of check it out, we're allowing that as well. So if you want information, let me know that. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm not much a public speaker. My English is my fourth language. And so forgive me if I'm not fluent. But I agreed to speak about Korean experience of immigration. I can just divide into Korean immigration into 3 waves. The first wave was 1903, January. Hundreds of Korean farmers, labor workers, came to the Hawaii to the as workers in sugar plantation, and so within 2 years, there was 11,000 Koreans working in the Hawaii plantation. That was the first wave of the Korean. Of course, then about 2,000 Koreans went back to Korea because of the hard work of the, backbreaking work in the plantation. And then the others maybe moved to the mainland, like California or even Washington State, and all over the different areas of United States. That was the first wave. Second wave was second wave was after Korean War. Korean War broke out in 1950, so that a lot of American soldiers came to help Korea at that time, and so after Korean War, there were lots of orphanage, from the war. And then also there were a lot of Korean women who married American servicemen. Those are the main, and so American servicemen, wives of Korean, and orphanage, and some of the students who are looking for the better education. So those are second wave of group. And the third group, I would say, is that 1965, that American Congress, they thought they needed some skilled workers, so that they made some quota system. So for that, about 20,000 Koreans came to the U.S. every year with it from 65 to 80. So, but the third wave of Koreans were not just, they were pretty educated, highly educated group, and businessmen and professionals came. But even there were professionals and highly educated, because of the language, they couldn't get a job with their status. So most Koreans, they became entrepreneurs. They have we say very strong tradition of the entrepreneurship. So you will hear or see that even Tacoma, King County area, there's 3,000 or 4,000 Korean-owned business is doing well, and their average of income is double than national American standard wage. So, of course, there are also struggling Koreans too. And also, the Korean brought that entrepreneurship and it's contributing to the economy, but also you heard about model agents in schools. If you ask Korean parents, why did you come to America? 9 of 10 will say, we came here for the better education for our children. So they really put emphasis on the education. So in that way, many Korean students are model students in the school area, schools. So I think that you see that even we have a mayor of a federal city is now Korean. We have mayor of Tacoma is half Korean. We see a lot of politicians and lots of professionals too now. And I think second or third generation, we are expecting more of those high professionals. And Koreans, they also very organize their group very well to share the information in their entrepreneurship. So they just always make an association or organizations. In Washington State, there are more than 1,000 members of Korean Grocery Association. And that's just, so they share informations and help each other. So among all the organizations, I just would like to share that Korean Women's Association, how we started, and I'm heavily involved with that organization. I came to this country in third wave of early 70s, and I married to Jewish American. They're sitting right here, Fred Warnick. When I was a graduate school studying English that I want to be a, teacher. So, but we end up married with Fred Warnick, and then lived there for 10 years. And at that time, American standard wage was so high compared to the Koreans. We lived pretty well for 10 years. And then, actually, he promised my mother he will live in Korea forever. We're not coming to the state. But my mother passed away. He's just, they pack the bag and go. So I just couldn't do it because I had 2 children. So came to this country, and I heard that my husband's family was 3 generations, lived in Tacoma, to have a big lumber factory, and so I thought, I will have well treated. But I came here, I wasn't invited to any of their family home. They got us to Real Dinky Motel. It's very, very small, and with the stove was just rusted, and it just, that put me a real cultural shock. And I completely got lost. I didn't know what to do. And I got really difficulty for, couple months in a depression or whatever. Anyhow, that's a long story. But that experience, my cultural shock, made me to involved in the community. And we kind of gathered some women, Korean women, just a club we call Korean Women's Association. And same time, about early 70s and late 70s, there were big number of Korean women who married American servicemen, came to the Port Louis McCord Air Force Base. So at 30 years ago, now that's 45 years ago, we're gonna have big 45th anniversary this year. So that time, Korean women was not very well skilled in even English language. They don't know how to drive. They don't know how to use a washing machine and anything. So they were really struggling. And then, of course, American serviceman husband was just frustrated. So there was some abusing going on, domestic violence going on. We went to the Port Louis and interpreting and helping, and that's how we started the KWA, Korean Women's Association, to help our sisters and Korean new immigrants. And then we end up doing a lot of classes, like how to drive a car, citizenship class, ESL classes, and how to write the resume. We did anything that new immigrant need. That's how we started. And then, and pretty much first of the KW, Korean Women's Association, we didn't have much resource, so we sold the kimchi, rice cake, whatever we can get. And then also Korean stores helped us some money, some resources. But then later we become smart, and we say, hey, these all Korean women who are the servicemen wives, they are not the only Korean women, they are the American citizens. So they should, government should help. Government should be helped. So we turn into our eyes to the government grant and service programs. And anyhow, it's, and now we have, after 45 years, we have offices in 11 different counties. We have offices, and then we have 1,200 employees, about 1,200. And then we also have maybe 12 different social service programs. Like we have We have 18 acres of orchard in the Roy City near the Mount Rainier. We planted 300 Liberty apple trees, and we harvest about 4,000 or 5,000 pounds of apples, and we donate to the food bank every year. And you know, the Liberty apple is 10 times more nutrient than what I say, Smith apple. Anyhow, that's for your information. So so we did that, and then we also serve about over 230 units of a low-income senior apartment to help the homeless seniors. And we have also our main service is the in-home care service, that seniors who can help themselves, and we send them to the caregivers to the home and help their, give them a bath and, take them to the doctors and whatever necessary for senior to survive, have a little dignity in their life. And that's our main service, actually. We serve about 150 hours a year, and just a lot of people and seniors say, if we didn't have this caregiver service, I would have been dead when I first had a stroke, whatever. So it's just give a little dignity in life. And I'm very proud of that, what we are doing. And we also have a domestic violence shelter, 19 units, and we serve, not just only Korean. We serve, maybe at one time we counted the 35 different language group we're serving. And we are serving mostly very, very vulnerable, underserved, voiceless population. That's our mission. We just have to serve those who can help themselves. And I'm very proud of that these women, immigrants who suffered depression, suffered domestic violence, all these Korean women are now contributing citizens of these kind of services. And I'm very proud of it. And I'm we all believe that we all connected each other somehow or another. We have to help each other to make a great country like called America. Thank you.
All right, good.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me here. This is an opportunity that I really appreciate because as an immigration scholar, I feel like it's part of my job to contribute to shift the public narrative about immigration away from the fear-mongering and the demagoguery and towards a more critical narrative. And by that I mean one that is based on logic and evidence, two things that unfortunately are more scarce these days of post-truth politics. As some of you might know, a lot of the opposition to immigration in the United States and the public opinion comes from places where you don't really see a lot of immigrants, right? It's not New York City and San Francisco who are leading the movement against immigration. So my contribution today will be from the perspective of a city that does have immigrants and a city that has had some success in immigrant-driven urban revival, and that's Baltimore City, the city where I live and where I teach. So I will be discussing some of the strategies, policies, and programs that the city of Baltimore has put in place to attract and retain immigrants with the goal of promoting urban revival, right? And some of the successes and some of the challenges that we're facing in this process. So maybe your last memory of Baltimore City is from April and May of 2015, when the city made into the national news because of the riots that emerged after the death of Freddie Gray, a black citizen who died while in police custody. What you see here on this picture is the neighborhood of Freddie Gray. It's a neighborhood called Santkuyl, located in West Baltimore. And if you watch the show The Wire, West Baltimore is the part of Baltimore that is depicted on that show, right? So here you can see the boarded up homes, the emptiness, the poverty, the vacant homes that unfortunately characterize a large chunk of Baltimore and other cities in the so-called U.S. Rust Belt. Now, I want you to contrast this picture with these pictures, which are from East Baltimore. Here you can see children playing on the streets, a small business that is open 24 hours, and an artwork at a bus stop that says in Spanish, "Here we are." Right? So if you contrast these two images, there are several factors that could explain the differences between the urban decay of West Baltimore and the urban revival that we see in East Baltimore. But immigration is definitely one of them. I want you to look now at this map here of Baltimore City. Right? Every red dot that you see on this map is a Latino immigrant. Now, try to identify where they are concentrated. It's East Baltimore, especially Southeast Baltimore. So they are associated with that process of urban revival, urban revitalization of East Baltimore. The local leadership of Baltimore, several of our mayors have realized the potential of immigration for urban revival, and they have put in place some initiatives, some programs and policies to foster that process. Right? So in 2012, one of the main steps in that direction was an executive ordinance that was passed by our previous mayor, an executive order that prevents city personnel, including the police, from inquiring individuals about their immigration status. Right? So that's what established Baltimore as a so-called sanctuary city, although the term that our current mayor prefers is a welcoming city, I think, to avoid the bullying from the federal government, the stigma that is being associated with the term sanctuary. But anyway, that was the ordinance that established Baltimore as a sanctuary city in 2012. The city of Baltimore has also hired bilingual police officers to facilitate the communication between different immigrant communities and the Baltimore City Police Department. The city has also supported many cultural festivities of different immigrant communities. So every October we have celebrations of the Hispanic Heritage Month. Every summer we have the Latino Fest, and other immigrant communities have their own events also supported or endorsed officially by the city of Baltimore. We have a Mayor's Office of Immigrant and Multicultural Affairs that takes care of all that. The city also provided funds for the Latino Economic Center to relocate, actually to open a satellite office in Baltimore City. They're based in DC. And this organization now provides assistance and microcredit for small businesses, focusing not only on the immigrant community, but especially on the Latino community. More recently, the city of Baltimore developed a Welcome to Baltimore guide. So it's a guide with a list of resources and services and advice, recommendations for newly arrived immigrants and refugees so that they can know how to live and thrive in Baltimore City. This welcoming guide is available in multiple languages. It's available online, and it's available in all the public libraries of Baltimore City. And there are other policies that I can discuss later in the Q&A, other projects that also aim at attracting and retaining immigrants to reverse population and economic decline in Baltimore. In my previous work, I tried to explain why Baltimore and other cities in the U.S. Rust Belt have adopted this kind of policy. And I found that my conclusion was that for these policies to be adopted and to be sustainable, we need to see a convergence between two factors. On one hand, the city leadership needs to be really invested in promoting urban redevelopment, in repopulating the cities and redeveloping the cities economically. On the other hand, the immigrant communities and their civic leadership need to be active in demanding measures and policies favorable for immigrant integration. So when these two factors converge, when these two actors dialogue, we are more likely to see policies for immigrant-driven urban revival. And that is especially true for cities with democratic electorates and whose population is ethnically bifurcated. That was one of my findings. I can discuss that further later, right? So cities with a large, with a majority, with an ethnic majority, and with a large ethnic minority. So that has implications for local immigration policy that I can discuss later. My more recent work tries to go beyond analyzing the policy-making process to looking into the effects of those policies and how they're being implemented. And my findings are still preliminary, but I have arrived at some interesting, I found some interesting challenges and ambiguities during my interviews. I'm adopting a qualitative approach, so I'm doing several interviews with civic organizations and immigrants and people in the local government. I'm going to mention only one. So in the case of public safety, since the mayor issued that executive order preventing police from inquiring people about their immigration status and preventing city personnel from getting involved in immigration enforcement, the relations between the Baltimore City Police Department and the immigrant communities has improved a lot. But many immigrants are still afraid of the police. They're afraid of coming forward even when they are just witnesses or even victims of crimes because they feel that they will be put into deportation procedures. So there is a communication gap, right? In addition to that, that is an executive order which basically established a policy of anti-discrimination for Baltimore City is still not yet part of the regular training that police officers receive in Baltimore. So you might have a weird situation in which you have a police officer that is bilingual, is fluent in Spanish, but he or she doesn't have the intercultural competence and the awareness needed to work in a collaborative way with immigrant communities. So that's something that we still need to work on. So there are positive results, but also some challenges that we are still facing, some gaps that we need to close, and I will be happy to discuss some of that in the Q&A session. Thank you.
Well, thank you all. Interesting, varied perspectives, but I think there's some common themes. So I'm going to start with a question just to get things rolling. I'm sure we'll have questions from the audience as well. But several of you talked about an entrepreneurial sense in immigrant communities, the interest in economic development. So I'm interested to hear from you. What do those small business entrepreneurs, what helps them be successful? What can we do as a community to help those small business owners and entrepreneurs be successful and grow and help grow our economy?
I say the success of the Korean entrepreneurs are, they actually work. Their hard working ethics. They just work maybe 18 hours a day or 15 hours a day, and also the family, everybody. If they start the business, it's just not just the father and mother, the kid and everybody, even cousins and whatever. They all help whatever they can. And I think I hear some problem is that these bureaucrats of that licensing and this and going through all this paperwork, they usually complain about it. And then some of the people come to the Korean Women's Association, can you help this paperwork or something like that? So we do when we can. So it makes some easier to, if governmental agencies make it a little easier for the paperwork, that will help, I think, to more, open up businesses.
The question is, what can we do to help make them more successful? Well, patronize their businesses. Make sure you go there, take your friends there, introduce them. We're fortunate with the News Tribune that they have a reporter, Sue Kidd, who covers food throughout, and one of her favorite places to write about is the Lincoln District. I've had conversations with her, and she just loves to explore many of the different cultures through food, as I talked earlier. But it is much more. It's about being intentional as a city in helping entrepreneurs navigate business. Business itself, just being an entrepreneur, that's hard work. 18 hours a day, yes. You know, it's said that your success in 1 year in being an entrepreneur is the number of hours you work in a week. If you want to work 40 hours a week, 40% chance you stay in business.
That's right.
And I can tell you, as a longtime retailer working 90 hours a week, that's true. But the one thing that we did through our Lincoln District revitalization project was that we opened up an office out there in the Lincoln District where we embedded city employees out there. Because we said, we're going to come in and help revitalize this district, but we're not going to come in and tell you. We really want to know what you see as revitalization. So we embedded employees out there, and one of the employees that we hired out there, my win, began sitting in that office, and pretty soon you'd see the business owners, they'd come poke their head and say, "You're still here?" Yeah, we're here. We rented the space, we remodeled it, we're going to stay. And it took a little bit, and pretty soon they're coming in and saying, "Well, I need some help filling out some paperwork." And pretty soon they're coming in and helping guide our project because now they trust us. Because we've taken that step, put a stake in the ground there, put someone who's culturally competent in the office, and have other employees coming so that we can connect them. We've relaunched the business district. The business is coming together because for a long time they just stopped meeting as a business group. Now they're meeting again. They're talking. They're visioning their district again and growing. And so I think getting out there and really just being involved day to day and just knowing the owners are an important part.
Good. Felipe?
I agree. I think the language barrier and the paperwork barrier are significant, and I know that for access to home ownership, definitely that's a problem. I don't know if to get loans for business loans, if that is a problem as well, but sometimes the lack of credit history on the part of immigrants and the need for special financial products that can better serve the immigrant population. In Baltimore, the Small Business Center recently hired a bilingual Spanish-speaking consultant, and that has had some good results as well, so to overcome the language and the paperwork barrier.
Great, thank you.
That will help. Yeah.
Liesl?
I'm no expert on small business, but I would say that what I heard in the Latino town halls is more language services in other languages. So there's very little in not just the city of Tacoma, but in the county for those who speak Spanish. And there's not one central located organization that can help with that. And so I think just more language services around small business would be really important.
Great, thank you.
But
So,
can I
Go
say
ahead.
one of my concern is that the new executive team is doing talking all about this shutting down the immigrants and also they are talking about foreign student who wants to stay to this country to start business and getting a job, and they are saying that E3 visa are going to be changed the status, and even a bigger picture, yes, FTA that they're going to try to change the whole rules that we had FTA, free trade agreement, with the different countries, and that's really kind of making people who wants to come here, who wants to stay here, it just scared them now. I feel. I don't know how you guys feel, but it's just sad to see that.
thank you.
And just one last thing, I think workforce development, so that means training people in small businesses. So we have an amazing second, third generation group of variety of cultures beyond Latino, and training them in jobs, including small business, is really important. We have very little of that.
Good point, good point. Yes, and I think we've alluded earlier to Sulja's point about the national climate and the negativity and the concerns that raises. And I think there's some things we can do about that, but a lot of what we're going to focus on today is what we can do more locally, recognizing that we're under that cloud of the anti-immigrant sentiment at the national level. I wanted to open up to the audience, so if there are questions, we do have microphones in a couple places, one over on this side, one on this side, so please just feel free to step up to the mic and ask your question, and we'll ask our panelists to respond. Like we have Al.
Good morning. I'm not quite sure how to frame my question. The various immigrant communities in this city have assets that are not necessarily visible to the rest of us, the entrepreneurs being the more visible. Are there key assets that you identify in your communities that the larger community could ally with and help strengthen you even further? Is that a clear enough question?
Having a little, Dr. Radcliffe, I was just having a little trouble hearing you vocally. So if you could repeat it, just the mic wasn't as loud or as clear.
Do the various immigrant communities, I shouldn't call them immigrant, have assets that would not be obvious to the rest of the community that we could ally with in some ways to help further strengthen your communities? Did I get it that way?
Hey, Liesl, I think.
Well, Al, I think you are an ally. I think you are an ally. I said you're one of the people that speaks up frequently for immigrants, and for our multicultural community, which is awesome, and in very specific ways with policy and support. I think about one of the Ephraim, who was in the back here, really saying that we need to have more cultural events. So although cultural events sometimes are not my first interest, because I'm more inclined to go towards health and education services, I actually think there's a lack thereof in some of cultural exhibitions for some communities. So although some communities are doing really well with this, so the Asia Pacific Cultural New Year just happened this last week. It's amazing every year, well attended, standing room only at the Tacoma Dome. So that, I have to say, is done amazingly well. Martin Luther King celebration is done amazingly well. But there is a lack of cultural heritage events for Latinos. And when we're 12% of the city, it seems really quite amazing to me. Why is this happening? And other places I've lived, this hasn't happened. So I think that's one place that we could use some help, and not just from the city of Tacoma, but from regular everyday citizens. We did apply for a small business grant, or not a small grant, our Latinx Unidos applied for a $5,000 grant for a cultural event in the Lincoln District this fall, and we received that. So we'll be putting on an event this fall. But again, we need support from, this can't be all done voluntarily. It's a lot of volunteer hours. We need more help and support from the wider community to do these types of things, and then to attend and celebrate the culture in general. And I think our community would do that if we had more cultural events, because I see that support for many other cultures.
Great, thank you. Andy, looks like you have a question.
First of all, thank you for this opportunity. As is obvious from looking at me, I've been around quite a while, and I've been very involved in the community, particularly out in Lakewood. So my comment is more in the nature of a comment, but also perhaps suggestion to the way that people my age can engage more with the immigrant communities. I've been a community activist for 40 years, so I've done this a lot. I know Sulja from, goodness, years ago. I have had the experience at Tacoma Community House of participating in something called Talk Time. Most people my age are not going to learn a foreign language. Most American native-born people are not going to learn Spanish or Korean or what have you as they get older. I would hope that all of us would learn a language while we're in school, but my French isn't too helpful. So I learned about the program at Tacoma Community House called Talk Time. And once a month, they have a program where ordinary people or extraordinary people who are non-immigrants can go and talk to English language learners who are there learning the language. And this is a very mixed group, all different cultures who are learning English at Tacoma Community House. And so I began to go there, and I've been there 3 times, I think.
That's good.
Just about an hour to interact with some folks who are learning English at the higher level of your classes, Liz. I've recruited about 10 people, roughly my age, some younger, to go and participate in that. And all of them have come away with a new attitude. Most of us started with a pretty good attitude because we wouldn't have gone if we weren't pretty interested in being involved in the community. An opportunity to sit at a table with 2 or 3 people who are struggling to learn English and who need some exposure to native speakers. I've spoken with Hispanic, Latino men and women, with people from Yemen, from Saudi Arabia, one woman in full hijab. That was quite a learning experience to me, to try to hear her, for one thing, when she was her face was fully covered. But we got comfortable enough that I was able to ask her to move so that I could hear her better, because it was a problem when I couldn't see her mouth. So that was a really profound intercultural experience for me, because I think I'm the person who needs to change. The people who are coming here as immigrants are already committed to change. But our society, I'm the one who needs to change. Those of us who are Caucasians, who are native born, we need to change. We need to be open to having this experience. So that I would like to advocate for that type of experience in all of your activities. Any of you who are doing programs, encourage people like me to come into a safe environment and have a one-on-one interaction. The people I know who are maybe negative about immigrants, they don't have any experience with immigrants except as domestic help. The second thing I'd like to comment about, and then maybe it's a question. We hear about microloans around the world, but what about microcredit in the U.S.? Why am I able to invest a small amount of money to help a struggling entrepreneur? I don't know if those programs are available or not, but I'd like to know, A, and B, how would I get involved with that, through a bank or some sort of an organization where I could invest in the entrepreneurs who are really struggling to make it in a very small but perhaps meaningful way. So 2 questions, language and on microloans.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I did not pay her to make that announcement, I promise. I don't know if anybody on the panel is aware of any microcredit programs. I know it's something that we're very interested in, and Scott is raising his hand. Do you know about a microcredit program? Harborstone. Great.
Hang on.
Oh, yeah, Martha.
Come here. Come here and say it.
Okay.
So it was, we are taping the
Ali and then Martha.
conversation, so it's very important. So if you make comments, please come to a mic.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to add to that information. They're just going to be looking to hire for that position very soon, and it also includes counseling. So if you need even a small loan, like a lot of banks don't lend large, or they don't lend small amounts, this particular program will look at $100, $500 to pay off small debt that you need to get your business off the ground, but then they have regular counseling. And you meet with a counselor on an ongoing basis after that, so.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, we got a couple people.
Yeah, I recall that TNT did an article about, I think UPS, there's a student group doing micro-lending, but there's also internet micro-lending now. I mean, you can actually go and invest in people who are flipping homes, right? You can, but there are internet vehicles for that now, and lots of different ways that that's being explored.
Thank you.
I would say another resource locally is Patricia at Bates College has been doing small business loan workshops with some help from the city of Tacoma as economic development as well, but I don't think they're really well advertised to the communities, immigrant communities in
Good
general.
point, good point. Okay, I think we have another question over here. Oh, sorry, I can't see the mic on this side. Oh, there you are, okay. The podium's in the way, sorry.
Here, we can move this over. Yeah. There we go. All right. Hello. So we spoke very briefly about sanctuary cities, welcoming cities. Felipe, you gave an example of how that's happening in Baltimore. So I guess my question would be, can you speak more to what the implications are of calling a city a sanctuary city over a welcoming city? Just kind of go into detail about that. And then also, if a city is not going to designate themselves either of those things, what we as citizens can do to ensure that that's happening without the support maybe from top down, but making it more of like a ground up from us being able to implement those values and what that entails.
Well, my first response is stick around for the second panel because that's really what we're going to talk about is how to make how we are a welcoming region and how we can do a better job of being a welcoming region. I don't know if Marty wants to respond to that question from the city perspective, but again, we will talk at some length in this afternoon's panel about the whole issue of welcoming and related to that, the sanctuary question.
Well, so sanctuary cities, that has both a negative and a positive connotation. A negative for anti-immigrant activists, they think that, those cities are sanctuaries for unauthorized immigrants and criminals. And the positive connotation is those are, cities that respect all human beings regardless of nationality and that are a safe place for immigrants regardless of nationality, ethnicity, or immigration status. I've seen some shifting from the sanctuary label to the welcoming label. I think it's a political move because welcoming seems more palatable to the larger population than the term sanctuary, which can come with that negative connotation as well. So, what actually classifies as a sanctuary city, there are different sanctuary ordinances that give different types of protections and instructions to immigrants and different instructions for the police and the people who work for the local government. But in general, they're basically policies that say immigration enforcement is not our job. Right? Some of them are more restrictive in terms of what they tell the local police and the local government people not to do. Some of them are more general. The one that we have in Baltimore actually is it's more an anti-discrimination law, and they were very careful when drafting this ordinance in several passages you see, unless required by law, so try to avoid conflicts with the federal government. But there is a variation in these ordinances in how much they protect immigrants or not from immigration enforcement.
And again, the mayor will be on our panel this afternoon and has spoken specifically about this question of sanctuary versus welcoming, and I'm sure she'll speak to that again.
Not wanting to preempt her comments completely, but just touch on a little bit because we have the question before us. When we sat down to review what it is that we do as a welcoming city, We already do everything a sanctuary city does. Our police officers do not ask for immigration status when they're interacting with the public. And if our chief was here, he'd say, because if we started doing that, they'd stop talking to us. And that's not what we value as Tacoma. Our schools already, and there's federal law that says you can't discriminate on national origin or immigration status. They educate everyone who comes into their building. One of the important things about sanctuary cities is what are your procedures inside your city jail? In Tacoma, we don't have a city jail. It's the county that operates, the county sheriff that does it here in Tacoma. So we don't have that part that many sanctuary cities have regulations around. And one of the other, two other key components that you see in sanctuary cities is that as an organization, you don't ask immigration status of those that you serve. We don't. We serve all residents of Tacoma, regardless of immigration status. And the other one that came in, I'm just looking at what Seattle did, is their big one at the end was when we're going to form a task force on immigrant and refugee issues. We already were, that was underway, and we've jump-started that forward. And then I think what we saw in Seattle is after they adopted their sanctuary city, they said, aha, we're a sanctuary city, what does that mean? And then they did the research, said, oh, if we really want to be helping immigrants, we need to become a welcoming city. And so a month after that, they joined Welcoming Cities USA. And Spokane is joining it, and Boise joined it. Because what we realized, from my perspective, sanctuary is a political designation put on it by a lot, at least here on the West Coast, by politicians to say, look, I'm doing something, trust me. Welcoming Cities says, here, we are actually doing something to improve the life and engage immigrants within our city. So I am very happy to be a welcoming city because that says we are actually doing things, and we've been doing things for 3 years in Tacoma.
Okay.
So although I think that is true, and I am very, very grateful for the city of Tacoma for the helping with the Latino town hall, I believe that we do need more proactive policies and not this is just the way we act. And we need more training, as we heard from Felipe, so that the police do know what what the culturally appropriate response might be. And again, if you're interested, there's a great report put out by Mi Gente, which means my people, in January 2017 that explains the difference between expanding what does the sanctuary city now do. And it specifically has 8 or 9 types of policies that look at how to put teeth into either a welcoming or a sanctuary city. I think we're mincing words when we talk about the difference. And I don't care what our city calls it as long as there's policies that really protect us. And one of the things that we don't have is a fund, and many cities do, that help immigrants that are getting into legal battles. So there's a lot more that we could be doing as a city.
Thank you. Okay, we have more questions. So we're going to try to get to those. Go ahead.
You answered most of my question. It is directed towards Felipe, though. I do love that Baltimore is being proactive in their police force with the language barrier, but like you said, it's not enough. And so if you could speak more to what they're doing to the cultural training, and does it stop necessarily at the police force, or where are other agencies that need similar cultural training?
Well, culture beyond language, you're saying? Yeah, so I don't think there is much going on. The city's trying to do something now with the public schools to avoid, to provide training and create a curriculum to no hate in schools. Baltimore is a city with, it's a majority black city, and there are some instances of conflicts between Latino students and black students in schools. So there's work being done in schools right now to prevent hate, conflict. And like I said, beyond, it's already difficult to make sure that everyone across the agencies of the local government that we have bilingual people in those agencies, and that everyone knows that they have a translator hotline that they can call whenever an immigrant needs some resource and you don't know how to speak the language. But beyond the language competence and into the intercultural competence, that's where the challenge lies. I think beyond the schools, I'm not aware of any other regular training that is being offered, unfortunately.
I think, Julio, are you waiting? Okay.
Thank you very much. Julio Kwan, member of the community. I would like to mention that sometimes we don't understand that we talk about immigration, we are talking about cooperation among two different groups or persons. You're talking about the city welcoming immigrants. But what do we mean by the city? City council, city employees, or all of us who live in the city? Because there is a lot of xenophobia, there is a lot of racism, and that is part of who we are, and we cannot obscure that. So when we talk about welcoming people, we are talking about integration, how this person is going to be integrated in our societies. And you cannot have only through economic development or to political development. No, the process of integration has to integrate politics, culture, society, economics, all of it. If not, we are going to keep on creating silos in which we are more dividing people than putting them together. And it is not that difficult if we understand that the problem begins right here with each one of us. If we don't conquer that barrier, we are not going to go anywhere. And we have to be very careful with the concept of development. When I became director of Central Latino, I divided the task of Central Latino in two. One, what are the services that the society, our society, provides to each one of our members? And the other is development. And I kept on talking about development and development because that's my expertise. Come from doing it around the world. And is this country developed or underdeveloped? Is it developed or not? Yes? A lot of people believe that. And when people from the third world come in here, they found sometimes conditions worse than they found where they come from. This is not a developed country. We have to develop this country too and integrate all of these people who have a lot of skills, and sometimes we deprive other countries from those skills. I don't know if you know that the cost of all of us, people with degrees that migrate to the US, costs more than all of the economic aid that the US gives, not just the US, all of the countries in the world, all of the economic aid that goes to the third world doesn't pay for the education that all of us who come to this country and produce in here. So it's not just the city, it's not just the country, it's at the international level. It's a big thing, and that's why I see a lot of brains here, and we can do it.
Okay. Thank you, Julio. Okay.
So, hi, my name is Sandra Spadoni. I'm actually the Director of International Student Advising at Green River and also on the board of Tacoma Community House. And that was a perfect segue to my question, is to ask the panelists, maybe particularly for Felipe, there's a global movement of people and immigrants, and the U.S. is not necessarily the destination of choice for everyone. And where are other countries that we can build? So not just looking at other regions and looking in the U.S., but what are other country models that we could look at to promote immigration and to say this is how it can work and this is a good model to follow? I don't know if you guys have any experience or comments about that.
I will give you two examples that are more familiar to me. One, in terms of national legislation about immigration, I think Argentina in Latin America is a great example. They have one of the most progressive national laws for immigration. I think the one that they have now was approved in 2004. And it's not totally an open borders concept, but it's very open and inclusionary in comparison to the legislation and policy that we see in the global north, right? Now, speaking about the local level, I have studied the case of Buenos Aires in Argentina, Sao Paulo, Brazil, and Mexico City in Mexico. And Mexico City actually has a very open and approach to immigrants, a very inclusionary approach, both for returning Mexican migrants. And I think because of Mexico's experience with immigration, they developed those policies first for returning Mexican migrants, but then they extended that to immigrants living in Mexico and to transit migrants that are mostly coming from Central America to eventually arrive at the United States. And many of them are decided to just stay in Mexico City because the city has been embracing them. And they have several policies to support immigrants economically, socially, and legally as well. Right? So we usually tend to think of Latin America as an immigrant sending area, but actually we have some good examples of inclusionary immigration policy, both on the national level and on the local level in Latin America as well.
Thank you.
I don't have a lot to add to that because I think you've done more homework on that. You said you're with Green River, and so I want to thank Green River for a lot of the work that you guys do around bringing immigrants in. After I closed up my small businesses, I had about a year and I took some classes up there. And being immersed in the classes that you have that are wonderfully diverse was a very big learning experience. I got to meet a woman in our class. She went by Jane. She told me her name from Somalia. I couldn't pronounce it if I had to, but her and her daughters were both taking classes there simultaneously. They were out of Tacoma, and they were bringing what they were learning back to the Somali community in Tacoma, and I had an opportunity to go out and meet with the community because of Green River and what you guys do at bringing immigrants in and creating a welcoming place up there, so thank you.
And I think our keynote speaker will also be, perhaps have some answers to Sandra's question as well. Maureen.
Hi, I do have a question. Thank you, panel, for being here. The conversation is really interesting. It seems to me that when an immigrant group gets representation on city council or county council or politics in general is really when sort of really solid policy starts to be created. And so I'm wondering if any of you could speak to political activism or politics as it plays a role in getting your group's message out, getting them to vote, getting policy formed.
Liesl.
It's one of my hobbies, so. We would love to have more diverse representation on council, both at the cities levels and at the county levels. And we are, again, not to be too much of an advertisement for Latinx, but that is one of our goals, is to have more representation. So one of the proactive things that the city, and I think Marty was a large part of this, is said get on commissions and boards so that we can get some experience with what city policy is all about. And I do think overall we as a group are pretty naive about policy, and we've talked to the city about that. Like, we need some help here. We need some policy analysts and policy managers help us figure this out, but we are very trainable and we want to know how to do that. So that's sort of a first level, and then how to get people elected is another level, and we know it takes money to do that. So if that's a way that you would be helpful, there are candidates that are interested in running that are of many different immigrant backgrounds, and I know many of the Latinos who are interested. And for example, there was an opening in the city council, and we came and spoke to the city council, but we wanted to see that some of the candidates were reflective of our community that they were considering, and I think they listened to us, and they raised up several immigrants into the final category. That was a start. We didn't get the person that we were advocating for, but that's a beginning, and so we need some support for that. We need more people to vote for people of many different backgrounds, of color. We are a very diverse community, not only in the city of Tacoma, but countywide, and we need to see that representation. It's really important, not just from a policy level, but from a role model perspective as well.
Great. Felipe.
We need immigrant political representation to have immigrant-friendly policies. The problem is that electoral politics can be restricted for immigrants because many immigrants are not eligible to vote or to run for office. But there are other alternative forms of immigrant political representation. You can have advisory boards that represent the immigrant community. In Baltimore, we have the Baltimore City Hispanic Commission, which advises the mayor in matters that affect the Latino community. Different government agencies can also have liaisons for different immigrant communities. That's also important. Cities can create offices that will advocate for immigrant issues and multicultural issues directly to the city leadership. In Baltimore, we have the Mayor's Office of Immigrant and Multicultural Affairs that does that job. And in addition to that, we have the activism of immigrant communities and their own civic engagement.
Great, great.
And
Okay.
just real quick, I'll note that, yes, have more representation on city council is great. We also have parks boards, school boards, port commissions, lots of elected offices. Many times, even in some of the smaller ones, they go unfilled on filing day, and they have to go out and recruit people just to put their names on the ballot on some of the smaller elected boards across our county. So look at many levels, including city council.
Okay, we're almost out of time, but it looks like we still have a few folks who want to ask questions, so please go ahead.
I'd like to thank the university for putting on this rather wonderful workshop, and they have another wonderful program for seniors called the Access Program that enables people to take a couple of courses per quarter for less than, greatly reduced prices, and it's quite wonderful. To that end, I studied with the Hispanic Studies Department here at the university, which again is wonderful in terms of teaching the cultures south of our borders and how immigrants have fared in the United States and what is going on there culturally. So this is an institution that teaches that sort of thing and engages in the community. I'm sorry, but I'm here to cast a little bit of a cloud over the whole thing. And that is within 3/4 of a mile of here, as the crow flies, a 20-minute walk across the bridge to the east, we encounter something that, kind of is like the founding fathers had this slight problem. Many of them were slaveholders. We have a slave center here in Tacoma, a for-profit one, which is on Tacoma land, is supported by the port, and we have, in fact, just extended their lease by 10 years. And I'm talking about the Northwest Detention Center, a for-profit prison for people who have committed no great crime. In fact, it's a misdemeanor to be in violation, but they have no citizen rights in this institution, and it is largely people of color. And they earn $1 a day. They're non-citizens. Many of them been there for a year. And to give you some idea as to the conditions, there was a hunger strike that lasted for 30 days there in 2014. Very little is spent on food for them, and even less for medical care. There was a man who had cancer, and they dragged their feet about treating him, and then eventually they just cut him loose, let him go, 8 months after he was in the institution. The Northwest Detention Center, supported by the city of Tacoma, supported by the port. And I would suggest that for any immigrant group, because after all, it's peopled largely by immigrants, it's peopled completely by non-citizens of the United States, who have none of the habeas corpus rights that any other citizen would have in a state or federal prison. I would suggest that immigrant groups join with the activists in Tacoma to get rid of this thing. I would suggest we start out by calling it what it is, the Tacoma Slavery Center. And I would suggest also that we do our best to break that lease and get them away from us. I'm sorry to think that it would exist anywhere, but it exists in Tacoma, less than a mile from the university. And I think that this is a blot on our escutcheon. But I think we ought to do something about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing it up.
Thank you for your question. The Northwest Detention Center is something that was here before I came on council and that I have, I'll just very openly struggle with why we have this. What occurred to me the other day is we put this in our port of Tacoma. And I struggle a little bit more because what's the purpose of a port? Just move cargo in and out. What are we saying when we put our detention center down there? On one hand, I would love to just pick that building up and move it somewhere else. Let's get it out of Tacoma. It's no longer our problem. Putting the building somewhere else doesn't solve the problem. Because what if we go put it over in the middle of Eastern Washington when there's not a city that at least helps those who are let out in the middle of the night? And if they were let out into the middle of nowhere? The port is kind of the middle of nowhere, but I really want to thank those who go down and help those and who house many of those who are just released out of the detention center in the middle of the night. There is reform that needs to go on there, but what we need is national comprehensive immigration reform that stops the policies that are putting them in the building in the first place. And then the need for the building ceases to exist. And that's what we need to do. Because picking it up and just kicking it out of our city to some other city is an answer, but I don't think that's the long-term answer we need to put in place.
Thank you. Appreciate that.